Welcome to Into the Yes. I'm Marissa Fay, a functional nutritionist and holistic wellness practitioner.
And I'm Jen Nickel, a movement witch and intuitive Reiki master.
You are in the right place if you're ready to question society's wellness standards and prepared to be inspired to make changes that are right for you.
Join us as we get into the yes.
Let's go. All right. Well, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Jen and I are so thrilled to have you here today. And today we are talking about a lot of the inspiration behind our podcast, Into the Yes, which is what is a yes? How do you know it's a yes? What's a no? We're going to just dive into the whole thing today. What is a yes?
What is a yes?
Like, what do we mean when we say, like, into the yes? What is a yes? Like, it gets thrown around so much. So what's a yes?
I mean, I think a yes is a feeling. I think that it's an answer to a question. But if you're asking yourself the question, then it becomes a feeling. So what does a yes feel like? So it might be good to start this episode with a little exercise.
Ooh, okay. I like it. Let's go.
Yeah, a little exercise that, I don't know, people have probably maybe experienced this before. And I know that some of the people that have taken classes with me have experienced it before because I've done it with them before. But I feel like it's a good guide. It's like setting the compass to your inner knowing. Mm-hmm. So all you do is ask yourself a yes question that you know the answer is definitely yes. Is my name Jen? Yes. Mm. But you take it a little bit further and deeper than that and feel, where do you feel it when you say a yes that you know is a yes? Mm-hmm. So it just takes a moment. So maybe we can just take a deep breath and pause with the breath. Nice inhale and exhale. And then just think to yourself. You can ask yourself a question that you know the answer is yes to for yourself. And then really start to explore your body and where you feel that land and what it feels like as you answer yes to it. Good. So I know my answers to this. I'm wondering, Marissa, what you get when you drop in and do that.
So it was really interesting because the first question I asked myself felt like after I calibrated, right, with like, what's my name and, that stuff. But then I asked myself, do I love Luna? Luna's my cat. And she's a very special being. And immediately it was like, it almost felt like this just like drop of like ease all the way down like my spine, just like ease and like a softness, but also like a weight to it of just like, almost like watching in slow motion, like a drop of water kind of like just drop and then land in like this big puddle.
That gives such a nice visual. Yeah. I feel a yes to that.
Right?
I like that. I like your follow-up question. So you kind of calibrate with is my name Jen? Is my name Marissa? Yes. And you feel that. And then it's nice to go with something that you know you love, because love is an expansive feeling, right? So do I love? And then you feel that. So I know for me, the yes feeling to me is always expansive. It's big. It's almost like when you see something just growing on itself, kind of like a spiral, opening and opening and opening. And it has like a gold glittery visual quality to it, the feeling. Mm-hmm. My brain connects that with good, expansive feelings. And it comes from, not quite my heart, not quite my stomach, kind of right where the ribs meet up at that peak. Mm-hmm. Is where I feel that expansion start to happen. So that's where I really feel it in my body. And then it it kind of waves out into the rest of me.
I love that. And something I want to note for us and anybody listening is like, if the way we describe our yes feels totally foreign to you, that's okay. And if this is maybe the first time you've considered what a yes feels like, that's okay too. To use whatever words or sensations kind of you gravitate to. And I would say it's very normal if you're not accustomed to describing how something feels or what it looks like or what it sounds like, if you're not used to it, to feel like you don't have the vocabulary to describe it. And that's okay. It's one of those things that I think is kind of like a muscle that we have to kind of work with. Like we go through life, using our senses all day long, right? That we sometimes lose the ability to connect the word to describing the sense. Or never had that ability. It's something we have to cultivate and work on like a muscle, right? So I think one of my philosophies in the work that I do, and we've talked about this, Jen, of like how hearing other people describe how these things feel is actually really important and can be really helpful, as long as you don't approach it as, okay, I need to be able to describe it the same way, right? But actually hearing a variety of ways people describe, how a yes feels is actually so helpful for you to learn more of the vocabulary of just like, what is that experience like for some people? And do I connect with any part of their experience?
Right. Such a good point. And each one of us is so uniquely individual that my yes sensation, feeling, visual will not be the same as someone else's, and it shouldn't be, because it's unique to me. It's my inner knowing, which no one else can feel. So good point that everyone, you're going to feel it differently, and you might not have the words to do that. You might draw a picture of it. Some people are really drawn to that, or there may be a sound that comes along with it, or it's just a knowing. It's just an understanding within yourself that there are no words for. So there's a lot of possibilities with that. And we're not used to doing this, right?
No.
Like we are not taught to tune in and feel what feels right and then follow that. In fact, we're kind of taught the opposite.
Yeah, I was literally going to say that. I feel like we're taught the opposite. And I feel like from when we're very young people, we're taught, part of being, a good daughter, a good sister, a good brother, a good whatever, fill in with a good person, a good student, a good fill in anything there with the word good. It's like part of what we're taught is that it means being obedient. It means following what somebody else tells you to do. Mm-hmm. And that inherently is denying your yes.
Absolutely. I mean, if you go back into school age years, you basically spent all your time sitting in classes, following something that probably isn't your yes. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, there are people that are in math class and that's a 100% yes for them. But there are a lot of people who are like, no, not for me. And then that's labeled as bad and wrong.
Well, and I also think there's a difference between a yes that is an immediate yes that maybe later could become a no, and vice versa. Like part of this conversation is, acknowledging that there's a feeling in the moment, right? And acknowledging that recognizing that can be so very helpful. But I also want to recognize that sometimes the immediate feeling isn't the lasting feeling. Sometimes the immediate yes isn't a lasting yes. And some of us really, I know I have had this in rebelling against some of my conditioning and coding. I've been like, okay, great. I'm just going to focus on what feels good exactly in the moment, right? I'm going to focus on what feels like a yes right in the moment. And that can lead to really impulsive and destructive decision making.
I was going to say that could be dangerous.
Totally. So I think here, like, I want to advocate for us all learning to hear the yes and being curious about where the yes comes from, being curious if that yes really does align with what we see as being kind of beneficial for us in the short and long term. That just because something feels like a yes in one moment doesn't mean it's a lasting yes.
Right. So what would be a good example, you think, of that?
Well, the schooling thing comes up, but I'm going to take this a different direction because I think of it when it comes to nourishment.
Mm.
And this feels really relevant to me as far as everything that has come out about, intuitive eating. And I'm using air quotes because I really struggle with that word, or those words. At the base of it, I'm a fan of it, right? Because I'm a fan of us learning to calibrate our intuition, learning to listen to our intuition, and using that when we choose things to eat and our nutrition and nourishment. However, it is flawed. And there are a lot of people using it, I think, in ways that ultimately could be negative. There are a lot of people using it in ways where they believe favoring and honoring your kind of first emotional response or reaction to something is more important than honoring possibly the lasting physiological or physical or emotional or mental impact of your choices. And so I think of, some of us, if we go on an extreme diet, we have this rebound effect, right? Where we've been so extreme for so long, and then you get around a food that is just so yummy and delicious, and you couldn't possibly say no to it. And everyone has their own thing, right? So let's just say it's chocolate ice cream, right? So you get around chocolate ice cream, and in that moment, it's a fuck yes to chocolate ice cream, right?
Yeah.
We're just like all about it. My body, you look at it, it's like your body hasn't been getting maybe quick, easy sugar and carbohydrates to digest. And it's chocolate, which is your favorite, And so all of a sudden,
you have an emotional connection to it.
Yes, it's a spiritual connection to chocolate.
Sometimes, yeah.
And you sit there for a moment and you're like, is this a yes? And everything in your being is like, this is a fuck yes. It's not just a yes, it's a fuck yes, right? And then you eat a whole pint of chocolate ice cream. And how do you feel? Right? How do you feel in 5 hours? How do you feel in a day? Because maybe you're someone like me where large amounts of dairy do not agree with your body. And so that is going to have an impact on me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to change a lot of things in my mental and emotional and physical well-being. Mm-hmm. So that can feel like a yes in the moment, but in the long term, it's actually a no. And instead, it's actually about looking at what am I doing? What are my habits? What am I doing to cause me to feel like that's a fuck yes, when there should be a space for something like that in my life in general, but there also should be a way that I'm caring for my body differently. And I need to reassess that.
Yeah. So this makes our yes enter into the gray zone a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the subtleties of intuition are there. It's a little of a mystery, right? But taking those moments to reflect, I think, or pause to really start to feel, what is it I'm feeling? Like, okay, I'm feeling a fuck yes for this chocolate ice cream. Am I really feeling it? Or is that masking something underlying? And so you go a little deeper to try and discover, and I feel like there's a lot of things we can do that with, a lot of things. When I talk about you're following your yes and you want this, and it might be like a shopping spree. This is another good example of I'm saying yes to everything that I want to wear that feels good, and I'm going to buy it all. But then you go, let's suppose you go and this is a yes, and I'm supposed to follow my yeses, and then you go home and the big no shows up in the mail and you're in debt now. And so that's my example of some yeses aren't in our best interest.
Do you think that type of yes lands somewhere different in your body?
I bet it does. I bet that it's in the head. And I'm saying I bet because I'm not in the middle of that right now, right in this moment, so it's hard for me to connect to it. I'm not making a decision like that right now. But my intuitive guess right now would be, if I was in that situation, it'd be in my head. It wouldn't be somewhere else in my body.
Yeah, and I tend to think, and this might just be my slant on it, I tend to think when something is like an authentic yes that truly benefits your highest well-being, that it's not so um like heightened. It's not
Hmm.
so bubbly. It's more I the word that comes to mind is simple, right? But like what I mean by that is like it's clear, it's not like it doesn't feel in that way kind of like a super high, right? It
Yeah.
feels like yes, you know?
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and that's something I think about a lot, which is, when I'm doing something driven from my intuition and I'm asking my intuitive kind of side to really get in the driver's seat, that intuition is not going to speak in complex ways to you. It's not going to be like, oh, yeah, you should go do this, and that, and then this, and that. That's not your intuition, right? That's your ego.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's your conscious mind. That intuition and this in this way, which is what we're really talking about with what is a yes. It's like tuning into your intuition and letting it be simple. Yes, no, right? It's simple that way, right? It is a yes, no.
Yeah.
It is a go here. It is a try this, right? It's simple. It speaks succinctly. It's not complex or elaborate in that way, because that's
Hmm.
how we mentally overcomplicate things.
Right. Yeah. And in the examples of the chocolate ice cream or the giant shopping spree, I think just calling it out or acknowledging, if you're practicing this principle, this idea that I'm going to follow what a yes feels like, which is basically following our intuition. Our intuition can also guide us to what a no is. So there's the opposites, and it might guide us into a maybe or a I don't know yet, right? But when you start tuning in more, like you said earlier, Marissa, it's like a muscle that we exercise, and it gets easier to do and easier to tune into. So I would think that there is a moment within that moment where you're feeling a lot of the yes, and like you said, it's feeling more complicated. If it's the yes to the ice cream or it's the yes to the things, it's probably like, because I deserve this, because I worked hard, because I this. Now that's when you're in your head and you might feel some tension creep up in your body, or maybe not. Just again, it's individual, but just allowing yourself a moment to pause and go, where is this coming from? And and where is that need or that want or that desire coming from? And can I fill that in a way that honors what I'm feeling, but also honors who I really truly am?
Mm.
And that's not easy, because we'd have it all figured out if it was, right?
Well, and that made me really think about how there's a step one to all of this. There's like a prerequisite, which I think is, are you doing things to quiet the noise? Are you doing things to actually allow these kind of messages to emerge from your intuition? Because someone who's not connected to themselves, which I think is really at the root of all this, if you're not connected to yourself, if you're not able to, we say things like tune in or listen, then trying to figure out what are your yeses could be challenging, could really lead you down paths that ultimately don't feel like they're right for you. So the first thing I think starts with, and people are going to hate this, and I know I hated this for years and years, which it starts with mindfulness, right? It starts
Hmm.
with taking deep breaths every day. It starts
Hmm.
with, you know, regularly taking moments of quiet and just seeing what comes up.
Right. But
It,
that's uncomfortable.
oh, I was going to say, fuck yes, right? Now that I've dropped the F bomb, let's just let it roll. But yeah, totally super uncomfortable. And
It's uncomfortable.
I tried to have a mindfulness practice for years and years. And I was even teaching other people how to do it. And I couldn't stick to it.
Hmm.
I just couldn't. And so I get how hard that can be. But I think it doesn't have to look It doesn't have to have as many frills as I think I thought it did, you know?
Yeah.
It can
Yeah.
really be as simple as a minute where you sit down a few times a day and just like take a few deep breaths.
It
But
can
I think
be, I mean, Marissa, it can be as simple as one breath.
preach. Yes, agreed. Yeah.
One breath.
One breath. Yeah.
I mean, start as small as I love the idea that you start so small it's ridiculous
Mhm.
because that's attainable and easy.
Yeah.
And our brains and our bodies like easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think we all have to be doing that in order to be able to truly get clear messages when we want to know what's a yes.
Well, that's part of the practice. That's part of if you decide, I mean, you might be listening, you're like, yes, I want that. Yeah, I'm having a hell yes right now. I want that in my life. I want to feel that. I want to connect back with myself. If that's you, then know that it's a process. It's like building strength in your body. You don't pick up the 100-pound weight on day one. You pick up the 2-pound weight and you slowly build up to it. And so, the idea here is that you're giving yourself space and grace to learn a new approach to yourself. So pick up the 1-pound weight and just take one breath just alone for yourself as a connection. And it's the intention is what it is. Like, I mean, we're breathing all the time, but how often do we go, I'm taking this breath just to connect to myself? And I'll tell you, it feels like a yes.
Yeah, right?
That just felt like such a yes. So we don't want to make this bigger than it needs to be because these things are simple. They're simple, and we don't want to. It's easy for our human brains to jump to like 12 steps ahead of where we're at right now and think I should be there. No, no, no. You should be right where you are, and then take a breath into the next step. That's it. And that's how you start to connect in with yourself. And that's how you'll start to be able to pause and tune in and feel why do I want this chocolate ice cream? Is it because I only ate crackers for the last 3 weeks? Maybe my body is, like you said, it's craving some nourishment that it didn't get or whatever it is. But that pause can give you more answers and help guide you into something that, like you said, Marissa, serves your higher self, not just the immediate ego self.
That has me curious too about like, first of all, agree with all of that, but to take it a step further, I think about someone who's maybe open to starting to do this or do it more. And I think about how it can be really confusing when we're exposed to what appear to be so many other people's yeses.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what your take is on how we're influenced by other people's yeses and how to stay in your energetic lane.
That's a hard question there.
I know.
Let me see. I do better with examples. I'm a very literal thinker sometimes. So,
Okay, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about, for example, I know a lot of people who, are at that precipice in life about kids.
Yep.
And, everyone around them has kids. Maybe they're partnered, right? And it's like they're partnered, seemingly outside looking in, their life is everything right on track timeline wise. And they're at the juncture of deciding, do I have kids or not?
All right.
And everyone else around them is a yes. Maybe they have siblings. It's been a yes for them. They have kids. They have friends. It's a yes for them. They get on Facebook. It's a yes for everyone in their network. It seems like it's a yes for a lot of people.
And then it's not.
And they're not sure.
Yes.
They're not sure.
So how do you navigate that?
How do you navigate that?
Yeah. Well, there must be an inner feeling or knowing that that comes up that makes you feel something. Like if you're making concessions to what you really truly feel, then that might be an answer there. That would be yeah, it makes sense. I'm that age. I'm like them. It makes sense. So I guess I should now. So maybe the word should in there.
Mm-hmm.
might be an indicator that is this my yes or is it someone else's yes? 'Cause if you feel like you should be doing it versus I really want to be doing it, then that might be an indicator there. I think, you giving that example comes into like group, like a whole group is doing something one way and you're the one, or at least the one that you know of that's going, I don't know about this. I don't know if this is for me or not, but they're all saying it's working. I'm not sure. And for me personally, I start to not feel well. I start to feel like a little discomfort somewhere, like anxious or frustrated or on edge. And that's my compass to situations like that. I don't know if you have, yeah.
Yeah. So your response really, I appreciate, right? The idea that like it's complicated and to like, you know, acknowledge what you're seeing and feeling and to learn what out of alignment or away from a yes feels like for you. I also want to throw out there to complicate the question is, are you someone who believes if it's not a yes, it's a no?
No way.
Because
No.
that I hear all the freaking time in dating, all the time. If it's not a yes, it's a no.
There's too many
People,
nuances.
yes, people love to say that too. It's one of my least favorite things.
It's easier. It's black and white. Black and white gives us the answer right away. But human existence and this life that we're living is not that simple.
So I think what we're getting to is that a yes can have gradients.
Yeah. If we're trying to break this down into a yes and a no, but that's black and white, it's really a scale,
Mm.
a spectrum of colors.
Right, right. It kind of, there's a continuum, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I guess I like the analogy or the comparison to a compass because it points you in different directions. Or maybe, yeah, compass, meaning one direction is a yes, the other one is a no, but there's all these other directions in there that lead one way or the other. And are those part of the journey? Are those the informants? Are those the experiences that help lead us toward the yes point? It's like, how many times do you have to follow a definite no to learn that was a no? And
Yeah,
then you had to do that in order to know what a yes would be.
I think part of this is about learning. Totally. Where like
Yeah.
there are spaces and ways where you can practice this or learn about this where you have been learning about this because this is life, right? Like
Right.
we've all done things in life or had experiences in life that have in hindsight even felt like a yes or a no, right?
Yeah. I
And
mean, yeah.
oh, go.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
So I think that by following the gradients and honoring the gradients, it's really actually an opportunity to ask a different question.
Yeah. To ask a different question or it's an opportunity. Again, I always go to the pause, which we ignore in the life that we live because we're always 3 steps ahead of ourselves or tend to be in society. So it's in the pause that you notice. You have to pause in order to notice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in that moment that you realize, oh, I was just doing something that did not feel right. And this is what I learned. So the next time you come up against something, then well, that part didn't feel right. This might feel right. It's all a learning experience. It's kind of like walking on a trail and going the wrong way. And then you go back, you're like, well, I took that turn. That wasn't the right turn. I saw some decent things, but I still have to get to where I was meant to be going. So I'm coming back and, oh, now I see where I took the wrong turn and I'm going to go up. But there's a point on the wrong turn where you have to stop and go, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I think part of how we really learn to honor the yes is to do that, right? Is to go the wrong direction on the trail.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like knowing what a hard no feels like is possibly the best way to figure out what gradients of yeses feel like. So maybe an exercise to do is to sit down, take a breath, and think about a hard no in your life.
I bet that's an easier sensation to connect to.
Mhm.
I bet it is. I'm be curious if people want to let us know.
Yeah, totally.
Because I know it is for me. Like if I say no, I really feel it. I feel like a boom in the center of my being. Like no, like everything stops, everything constricts, everything contracts.
Mhm. I feel it more. And so you have the compass analogy, which is one that, a lot of people might identify with, but I actually think of it as an instrument.
Mm.
And for some reason, a string instrument. And it's like the instrument can be out of tune or in tune. And so that's your kind of calibrating with and learning to kind of be still and take a breath so you can trust what comes up, what the instrument plays. That's getting in tune. And then you have these different strings, right, that have different notes. And those notes mean different things to you, right? And there's a note that is a no, a hard no. There's a note that's like, well, maybe, and there's all the in-betweens, and there's notes that are like, well, it's kind of a yes, or yes, that's definitely a yes, right? But learning how how the different strings sound, how the different kind of degrees of yes or no sound, I think is a huge tool. And maybe that kind of analogy might serve some people, differently, because it's just another way to describe the same thing we're talking about.
That analogy serves me nicely. It's
Love
it's
it.
a nice way of looking at it because it offers a little more gradients, like you said in there.
Yeah,
Uh,
totally. I
yeah.
think, one of the ways that I orient this topic is around deconditioning and reconditioning.
Hmm.
Um, and, in conversations you and I have had about just what we want to share in this space, we talked a lot about like unlearning, right?
Hmm.
And kind of peeling back and getting rid of all these just garbage ideas and ways that society has conditioned us, our life has conditioned us to show up, to approach our own well-being, to approach our health, to approach just everything we do in life. And I think in the learning to kind of lean into the yes and experience more of the yes, there is a deconditioning. And I think there very well is a time or times where it can feel like the message is twisted.
Hmm.
And I think that is a time to pause and recognize that maybe you're being influenced by some of these things that you've learned that maybe you don't agree with, or it's time to question. And
Hmm.
so it could be a sign to pause and step back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like maybe it's not a time to rely on this kind of tool, right? Of being able to sit down and be like, is this a yes?
Right.
I think if it's fuzzy, then it's maybe not time to ask the question.
Yeah. That makes sense. And maybe just that's time to just be moving,
Mm,
be moving your thoughts, moving your body, taking action in your life. Just, that's when, to me, I feel like if it gets into that fuzzy area, that you kind of need some grounding. And to me, grounding is day-to-day actions that we do in this life, like preparing your meal or getting a drink of water or folding laundry. The different things that we have to do to exist in the life that we're living,
mm,
get dressed, and just focusing on those things and just stay simply human.
mm-hmm.
I wanted to touch on the recognition that this might be very uncomfortable for some people, and just to recognize that, you know, we're speaking through our own lens of our own experiences, and there are plenty of other lenses that someone could have experienced, and it gets harder if you've had to suppress who you are, if society doesn't accept who you are or how you want to live or how you're being, then there may be pieces of you where you've had to completely numb that out, and that complicates this. And I just want you to know that that is acknowledged and seen and supported by us. But it doesn't mean that we think it's easy for everyone, is what I wanted to point out.
Totally.
You know,
It's also not easy for everyone every day or every
Right.
time, or right. Like, again, one of the things that we always want to make note of in these conversations is that there are gradients. It's part of how, you know, Jen, you and I like came to find and adore each other, is that a lot of the black and white influences that we've had related to, you know, our business and talking about what we do just don't resonate for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's space between offering up something as a suggestion and something that people can try and that will likely serve them, but also offering up that, you know, there are going to be moments where it maybe isn't going to feel good. There are going to be moments where you're still learning, right? There may be reasons that it's harder for you than someone else, and acknowledge that's all real.
Mm-hmm.
And still, there is something valuable here.
Yeah.
Even if what's valuable, frankly, is someone listening and being like, yeah, this is a heck no to me. This is a
Right.
heck no.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. I would never do this. I don't want to do this. How could I rely on myself? No. Okay.
Right. Right.
There's
That's
something
important.
there.
It's important for you to know that.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And that is the whole point of what we hope to and plan to and will offer up with this podcast, is things that are yeses for us, ways that we're leaning into more yeses in our life. The topics that we share and offer are things that have been meaningful to us, but we know they are meaningful to you. We just don't know if they're meaningful to you in the same way for us, because
Right.
the meaning could be in that it's
I know.
a no. Exactly.
Right.
And that is equally useful.
That is useful information to you. That's part of this. You know, what we're talking about is that saying of like, it's not the destination, it's the journey. We're discussing the journey of life, the ebb and flow, and the lessons to learn and the things to unlearn and all of that. So yeah, it's more
Totally.
information. If you hated this and you have a feeling about it, that's your information.
Yeah.
But if you loved it, that's your information too.
Right. Absolutely. So that brings me to, what is your yes for today?
What is my yes for today?
Yeah. After we had this conversation and we dove in and we tried to speak very simply and succinctly on a topic that we could probably talk for hours about. What's your yes today?
You know, my yes is to understanding that every experience has its purpose. And it informs the next experience, or the reaction to the next experience.
Yeah, I think my yes is, I actually want to add this on to my kind of daily meditation practice and just see what other things I can kind of calibrate my instrument to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even start out with some of the easy questions, right? Of like, do I want this for breakfast, you know? And
Right.
just
Do I actually love this coffee I'm drinking
right,
right now?
exactly.
Right.
Like, start with some simple things. Do I want to go for a walk today? Which for me is almost always a yes if it's a beautiful sunny day. So I'm going to start with some of those things, but I'm curious I don't often consciously tune in for that yes.
It's a good point to do that.
Yeah. So
because it's those conscious steps that make a huge difference, right?
Yes. And I'm going to do small things.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We did small things at the end of the last episode.
We did. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a thing going with that. Yeah.
Yeah. My small thing on the last one was to walk every day outside, and I have done that.
Oh, good. Which, depending what order we release this episode, y'all, you may not have heard that one
right.
yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
But just know it's in the mix, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. My small thing, you know, sometimes my small things, I forget about them.
Fair.
But my small thing is going to be along that same concept, is that maybe I'm inviting more opportunities to pause and ask the question,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, dear listener, wherever you are, take a moment, figure out what your yes is after listening to this episode, or what your heck no is after listening to this episode. And we would love to hear from you. Jen, where can folks find you?
Yeah, I am on Instagram at Jen Nicol. It's spelled Nicol, so it looks like Nicole. Jen Nicol09.
Awesome.
And I have a website. Now I have a website.
Yay.
It's called theelementsexperience.com. So
And
those are two
I'm
places.
awesome. And I'm at Marissa Faye Wellness, and you can find me at marissafaye.com. And we can't wait for you to come back for our next episode, all about something different that we are leaning into and into the yes with.
Yeah, leaning into. So, Marissa and I were just reflecting on the episode that we just recorded and saying that, like, yeah, it's good. I think we got our point across and all of that. But there's a piece missing, which is us just being us, which is that we're funny.
Yeah,
Or
which
we're at least making each other laugh.
we realized that, we had just talked about how nuanced this yes thing is, but also we tried to tell you that it wasn't nuanced.
Yeah, it just came up. Right? Okay. Yeah. Marissa's dating life led
Yeah.
us into this where I said, well, there is. Now, maybe that was the head yes or the no yes and I go, God, it's muddy water, isn't it? And we just filmed a whole thing or recorded a whole thing about a yes. Here we were, like a topic. Let's talk about a yes. And then we realized midway through, we don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
Right. And to that end, anyone who has dated as an adult, because I just think dating when you're younger, whatever, but I'm in my mid 30s dating, and we were using this whole conversation of yes, comparing two guys I've dated, and how with one there was a lot of confusion, but also a lot of like initial feeling. So I felt it was a yes, and I kept trying to rationalize the yes I was feeling, which was just like passion and attraction, right? And Jen has been along for that ride with that person who shall remain nameless. But then comparing to someone else who I'm dating, who we just describe as a slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
And that feeling really good, actually. And at the end of the day, maybe that was the yes, and the other person was not a yes, but in the moment, it seemed like a yes because I was so excited.
I'm laughing because you're like, it was a yes, but I didn't know it was a yes, but I thought it might be a yes. And I guess our point here is like, we're not creating this podcast to come on and preach that we have a full and complete understanding of these topics that we're talking about. We are coming on to discuss like a group of friends, like, what is it for you and what is it for you? And I don't know, one day it's this, another day it's that. And it's like in the middle of talking about it, you're going, do I even know what I'm trying to say or what I'm talking about? And like, yes, I have experiences and I'll share those. And I just think that there's a lot to be said to just that right there that you'll see in this next episode. The way that we talk about it and answer and how nuanced it becomes.
Also, I'm just going to say too, anyone who says they're an expert in anything and they're like, no, it is always this way and I always do this perfect. Like, I feel like I've seen so many people on social media, like, for example, someone who talks a lot about, let's say they're a relationship coach and they're trying to talk about like how to have a healthy relationship, and they've been in partnership and they're sharing about their partnership, like their partnership is perfect. And then all of a sudden they go through a breakup and it's like, oh, well, I guess all these things I talked about actually didn't work,
Right.
or they try to give a spin like, well, I learned that it didn't work and I didn't know before. And so don't follow that old advice, follow this new advice. And it's kind of like, we're all just figuring it out.
We are all just always figuring it out. And one thing that I know truly, deeply, madly is that I don't know much about much. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think I've learned so much. And then I realize it's like the more you learn, the less you know.
Yes, literally that. Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
And I feel like in some of these topics, we're just a few steps ahead of some people. And that might be ahead of you who's listening right now or behind you. Like who the F knows?
Who knows?
Who knows, right? But this is our offering.
It is. And we are here to try to make it fun. So let's
Yeah. Let's do
we
that.
can do it. We can
We
do
can
it.
do it.
I know that we can.
I'm a yes to us making it fun.
I'm a yes to this being an entertaining space that you show up to and you actually yell out to us in your car or wherever you are, where you're like, "Hey, yes," or you start laughing or something like that. I'm committed to that.
That's the goal. I'm going to just put it out there. So as you listen to this episode and whatever other episodes you listen to, if you find yourself speaking back to us, then we want to know, because that means we have met our goal.
Yep. That's the goal. That's the plan.
I love it.
Okay.
All right. With that, enjoy this episode.
Enjoy it. We think it's okay.
Okay.
We think it might be okay.
We're kind of a yes to it being okay.
We were a yes and now we're a no, and then we're somewhere in between right now. So give it a try and let us know.